Hi everyone, this is Joseph of Sepian, and today, January 19, 2023, is my father's 29th martyrdom anniversary, Martyr Hayek of Sepian. Over the past few days, I have been writing some stuff and just sharing my heart in a letter to him that was supposed to be private, as it was personal. But I thought that on such a day, it may be worth it to share it with you as well and be a blessing to you, as many of you also know my father or want to know him more. So I will read this letter for you. To the man who was ahead of his time and knew the cost of following Christ and the price for freedom. Since your death 29 years ago, when I was 20 years old, every year I tried to put myself in your shoes. I don't know exactly why, but maybe because I wanted to experience what you had experienced. I wanted to see your perspective in light of events and situations that you had faced. And maybe simply, I just wanted to get to know you more than the 20 years that I had the chance for. When I was 23 years old, I remember how you fell in love with my mom. And just as her name meant queen in Armenian, you treated her like a queen. You showed her love and you were faithful to her until the very end. It was then that I realized how much I can learn from you, to be faithful and loving husband. When I was 25, I remembered that when you were 25, while ministering to churches in north of Iran, you had an accident on a highway and lost your first child, who was only 6 months old. You were in hospital for 2 months with broken face and bones, but your spirit was never crushed. It was then that I realized how much I can learn from you, trusting the Lord in all circumstances and be joyful. When I was 29-year-old, I remembered you at age 29, when you were already serving in a small church in Gorgan, a city with fanatic religious Muslims who sometimes attacked the church, breaking the church glasses, giving you threatening letters and more. But you stood your ground and continued your mission. It was then that I realized how much I can learn from your call to the mission and perseverance. When 34, while I was a dad myself, I remember, despite your busy job and challenges at the time, you spent quality time with us as kids, taking us out to have ice cream, bicycle rides, and even you built a small pool in our backyard in Gorgan. It was then that I realized how much I can learn from you, to be a loving and fun father. When I was 40, I remembered you at the age of 40. You were in Tehran and you had so much responsibilities that I could never imagine. You were in leadership, you had high position and power, highly respected, but you never became prideful. You didn't misuse your authority. You treated everyone equally, child or adult. With your humility and teamwork, you soon became the leader of all Protestant churches in Iran. It was then that I realized how much I can learn from your teamwork and humility in leadership. When I was 45, I remembered that when you were 45, the church was under a lot of pressure from the government, which ultimately resulted in execution by hanging of one of your best colleagues, Pastor Sudman, in the city of Mashhad. You immediately went there to show love and care to the family and to the body of Christ, and assuring them that they will be okay. It was then that I realized how much I can learn from your love and support for the people in the church. When 46, I remember the difficult situation at your age of 46. There were natural disasters, earthquakes, refugee crisis, and a country in major need of help and relief. As a leader of the church, you used all your resources to bring support and relief to the Kurd refugees, to the villages in Rasht, and to the Afghan refugees, and much more. I remember that you personally went to all those refugee camp locations and sometimes even took me with you so that I could see the power of love in action. It was then that I realized how much I can learn from you to love and care for the people outside the church. When 47, I realized as a pastor you have done hundreds of sermons and songs, but none of those would have been effective if you didn't live them. Your life was the loudest song and message that you ever preached. It was then that I realized how much I can learn from you, or how much we can learn from you to be true Christians. Last year when I was 48, I remember that at your 48, the stress and pressure around you were at its maximum level. And I could sometimes notice that in your voice. I could see that in your face, no matter how you were trying to hide it from your family. I remember your suitcase that was always ready by the door to immediately respond to a call and travel short and long distances to save someone from prison and give hope to a colleague who were constantly under threat. All this was happening while you yourself were regularly interrogated, threatened, and forced by the regime to close the doors of the churches, but you bravely stood against all these pressures and never compromised. It was then that I realized how much I can learn from you, wisdom and bravery. Time has passed and it has finally come to this year that I am 49. And this year, at your 49, on such a day as January 19, you were kidnapped from the streets of Tehran and soon after were horribly attacked by the regime's forces and were stabbed to death. As I review every moment of your life at your 49, I try to skip the painful and bleeding parts that you experienced at the very last moments of your martyrdom. I do believe that God gave you extra strength in those moments. If this year I were to put myself in your shoes and experience what you experienced, I would certainly feel very weak and probably scared. But I am once again reminded of not to compare and to know that God has created me and each of us differently. So today I can still be the best that God has created me for. This year at age 49, I am starting to understand you better, to know you better. I think this year with the revolution happening in Iran, people in Iran have also come to understand the value of freedom, freedom to believe, and willing to fight for it. It is this year that more than any other year, I understand your love for God, your love for people, regardless of their color, ethnicity, language, or belief. This year, I and many others realize how much we can still learn from your value for freedom, love for neighbor, and the courage and sacrifice for friend. After this year, there will not be any reference point for me to review your life and to compare to. I know I will continue remembering you and missing you. With your life and martyrdom, you have left so much behind for me and for us that we can learn from you for the rest of our lives. Even if as time goes by and my memory starts to degrade and stories start to fade away, for sure I will remember these three highlights from your life: faith, hope, and love. And I will always remember that love is the greatest.